I'm Cody Stoots. Welcome to the channel. Let's talk some Texans. How are you betting the Texans in 2023? We'll go over the team's win-loss over-under, go through some award contenders that are on this Texans team, as well as some stat predictions from the odds makers, some over-under on those as well. We'll get into all of that. I would appreciate a like on the video. Hit the little thumbs up button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check out my website, Houston Football. For all my writing on the Texans, there's a link in the description down below, or you can check it out at www.houfootball.com. Let's get into this Texans win-loss over-under. 6.5 is the number that the odds makers have set, and that feels like a pretty good number. Now, I know it jumped around a little bit leading to ultimately what this number is. And if there's someone out there that will give you 6 on the nose, go after it and try to make that wager that way, however you want to go about it. But it started, I think, at 5.5, jumped to 6.5 ultimately. And I'm going to bet the over. In fact, I've already bet the over on the 6.5 for the Houston Texans. And that's the underdog in this bet. That's not the favorite in this bet. The favorite is for them to go under the 6.5. And I understand it. I understand the reservations about this team. I believe in Nico Collins, though. I like a lot of the players that they've added. And when you start trying to figure out, how do I win my wager if I go over? How do I get to 7 victories? It's a not easy path, but it's a doable path for the Texans to go down. You go 4-2 in the division, you beat the Arizona Cardinals and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then you just upset somebody else. I know that sounds a lot easier when I just say it, but think about this division. The Titans stink, the Colts stink, and Jacksonville has seemingly tripped up with you at some point every year, it feels like. So it's not crazy to think that in the AFC South, in your 6 divisional games, the Texans could go 4-2, or at the very least, if you're trying to get to that over, 3-3 in those 6 divisional games. And if you could get to 4-2 as the Texans in the AFC South, you think about Tampa coming to town, you think about Arizona coming to town, those should be 2 very winnable football games. Now you're sitting there at 6 wins, and you just need one other upset. You just need an any given Sunday, and you get to 7 victories on the season. So for me, I definitely see that being possible. And even if you only get 3 AFC South wins, you still count on Arizona and Tampa. That gets you to 5. And then you think about the rest of the schedule. That's a few games, a few opportunities there for the Texans to just pull 2 upsets. Just 2 upsets. I mean, that's not the craziest thing in the world, not in the NFL, not with the way that this Texans team is supposed to play, and especially if they got rolling towards the back end of the season, or you caught a team that maybe was disappointing and shut some guys down. It's a doable thing to get to 7 wins for this Texans team. That's why I've bet the over on the 6.5 wins for the Houston Texans season. Now let's talk about some award candidates here for this Texans team. I don't know that there's an MVP candidate on this team. Certainly would love to find out that I'm wrong and there is an MVP candidate, but I don't see an MVP candidate on this team, or an offensive player of the year or a defensive player of the year, nothing like that. And maybe John Mechie can get into the comeback player of the year conversation, but it's going to be difficult to defeat DeMar Hamlin in the comeback player of the year conversation. Of course, with anybody in the conversation for comeback player of the year, it's just great that they're even in the conversation. That means something has gone tremendously right for them in their path and their return to football. But there are 2 spots where I see 2 candidates for the Houston Texans in individual awards. Let's start with Offensive Rookie of the Year and C.J. Stroud. Plus 1,000 on C.J. Stroud. $10 wins you 100, $100 wins you 1,000 if Stroud wins the award. And it might sound simple on how he wins it, but it's a little bit more complicated, and it's tough to see how C.J. Stroud wins this award, but he's got a chance to do it. The biggest thing about this is, yes, if you're the best quarterback in this quarterback class, you will be in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year. That may not be enough to win Offensive Player of the Year, though. You think about Bijan Robinson and what he's got as an opportunity in front of him. I know Jahmyr Gibbs wasn't used a ton in the Lions' first game, but I would expect that he's going to have opportunities. And then a ton of wide receivers have chances to make their name. I think about Zay Flowers in Baltimore as a guy that could be a tough competitor for C.J. Stroud for this Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And to win it as a quarterback, you've got to be really darn good, or your team has to be really successful for you to win it as a quarterback. You think about some of the recent Offensive Rookie of the Year winners that were quarterbacks. Justin Herbert set the single-season rookie touchdown record, okay? I like C.J. Stroud. I don't know that he's doing that. Kyler Murray, when he won it, he had over 4,000 yards of total offense, throwing and rushing the football. I like C.J. Stroud. I'm bullish on his season, but I don't believe he's going to total over 4,000 yards of offense. Now, if he does, he's going to win this award, and it might be a profitable endeavor to put a little money on him. And then you think about two other winners, Dak Prescott, Robert Griffin III. Both of those guys had playoff teams around them and led their team to the playoffs. And I like this Texans team, but we just talked about getting to 7 wins a moment ago. That's not a make the playoffs type situation. So it becomes difficult for C.J. Stroud to win it, but if the rookie class overall doesn't have some sort of dynamite standout defender and he ends up being the best quarterback in the rookie class, then you can see how he wins the award. So it's worth a little sprinkle. I wouldn't put any sort of big-time investment in C.J. Stroud winning this award, but it's worth a little sprinkle just to cover your bases in case C.J. Stroud is a lot better than most people believe he is going to be. A guy that is going to be a lot better than even I expected is Will Anderson. Will Anderson is the favorite for the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. He's been the favorite since the moment he was drafted, and I believe he's going to go wire to wire and win this award. I've loved what I've seen from Will Anderson in training camp and the preseason. His teammates rave about him. His coaches rave about his preparation, and you've just seen little bits and pieces of that top-end, high-end potential that Will Anderson brings to the table. Now, you're not making a ton of money. Will Anderson, as the favorite, is not giving you great odds. In fact, I got worse odds than the plus 400 that Will Anderson is at a lot of places right now. But I believe he's going to win this award. I believe double-digit sacks are on the table for Will Anderson. And you start thinking back to what type of season that guy has to have to win the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Yes, I understand Sauce Gardner was a dang all-pro last year when he won it. Will Anderson doesn't have to be an all-pro to win this award as a rookie. You go through some of the history, and I look back and I think back to when the conversation popped up from Laramie Tunsil that he sees a little Von Miller in Will Anderson's game, and I think back to how good Von Miller was as a rookie. If Anderson can replicate that, he's going to win this award. And you start thinking about who the contenders are, who's somebody that has a little recognition now and could find themselves in the conversation with Anderson. And all I really think about is Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman out of Georgia, who got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. And with that, a little bit of a rotation in Philadelphia, a really good team around him, and a defensive tackle. Yes, the stats don't have to be as good for Carter to get in the conversation. Like Anderson could have 4 more sacks, and people could be in love with a sack number that's 4 less than Anderson because it's coming from a defensive tackle spot for Jalen Carter. But Jalen Carter's not going to play every down right away, I don't feel like. Will Anderson does feel like he's going to do that. So he may have a snap advantage on Carter. He's got a positional advantage. Edge guys, it's easier to pop some big numbers, big sack numbers, tackles for a loss, things like that. But Carter's a serious contender. I just like Anderson's potential. I love what I've seen from him. I've already made this wager. I didn't get as good odds as the ones that are out there now. But Will Anderson, I believe he's going to go wire to wire, favorite to winner of the Defensive Rookie of the Year award. Let's go through some statistical predictions from the odds makers on a couple of different players. Let's start with C.J. Stroud, over under 17.5 touchdown passes. Now, this number has jumped around a little bit. Earlier in the offseason, I saw this number at 20, and I thought, okay, well, 20 makes a little bit of sense here. I could understand why people might be thinking that. And then I saw 17.5, and that was a jump all over at moment, going over on 17.5 for C.J. Stroud. You think back to what the quarterback rooms over the past 2 years have been able to accomplish with Tyrod Taylor, Davis Mills, and company, and it's been about 20, 21 touchdowns the past couple of seasons from a passing touchdown perspective. Well, C.J. Stroud's better than those guys. The offense is better. The overall team is better. How is he not getting more than 17.5 passing touchdowns? I mean, this is not a situation a couple of years ago like when Trevor Lawrence had all these lofty expectations and it turns out the team was an entire mound of chaos around him. That's not the case with C.J. Stroud. I love the over 17.5 for C.J. Stroud on passing touchdowns. I definitely believe he's getting into early 20s. So I would think 21, 22 on the season for C.J. Stroud is what he's going to get to. So I like the over on this. I've made a wager on this. Let's get to some of the other players. How about Damien Pierce? Talk about another just like smash the over on Damien Pierce. You look at what he accomplished last year, not even finishing the season. He got close to 1,000 yards. He had 4 touchdowns from a rushing touchdown perspective. And again, improved team, improved offense, running back friendly offense. And yes, I understand Devin Singletary is here, and Singletary is a guy that's amassed quite a bit of total or all-purpose yards over the past couple of seasons with Buffalo. But if Pierce is taking care of business, Singletary's there to extend him, make sure he's more fresh at the end of games, at the end of this season. Man, I'm going way over on Damien Pierce's rushing touchdowns. 8, 9, double digits should be within the conversation. Again, I just love what this offense means to running backs, and I love the improvement this offense has made from last year, and that's the main reason I like Damien Pierce's over on his rushing touchdowns so much. And again, his yards per game would have led you to believe he was on pace for almost 1,200 yards last year. So by virtue of that, again, we're thinking he's going to get extended out. He's going to be healthy. He's going to be able to play at a higher pace later in games because you have a legitimate backup running back to take some of the workload off of him. I like the over on Damien Pierce's rushing yards as well. So bullish on this offense a little bit until we get to some of these pass catchers. Nico Collins, the wide receiver for this team. 600.5 yards is the number that most places have, and I'm going to go under on this. I don't know that I'm not going to make this wager. If I had a lean on this, I'd go under. Ultimately, it's probably a stay away play from me because I would just stay away from a Nico Collins wager because I don't know exactly who Nico Collins is when the regular season gets here. I know who he is in practice. He's one of the best wide receivers on the team in practice. He's one of the best practice players that this organization has, and he's done that a couple of times in his NFL career to this point. But he hadn't stayed healthy throughout the course of an NFL season, and you think about the almost ride the hot hand wide receiver by committee that this team has, the options that C.J. Stroud's going to have. Robert Woods, Tank Dell, Noah Brown, they're all fighting for Nico Collins' reps that he's going to need and passing opportunities headed to those guys that aren't headed to Nico Collins. Like, the number does not seem that daunting. The number is not crazy. Like, a good wide receiver, a solid wide receiver goes over this, but the injury history, the inconsistency in the regular season, his yards per game would have put him well past this if he played enough games last year to get past this number. That's my concern with Nico Collins. Ultimately, it's a stay away. If I had to play it, my lean would be to the under on Nico Collins. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm eating my words and Nico Collins blows past this number, hell, doubles this number, but it doesn't seem extremely likely to me at this point. One more player prop for you because I feel like it is just too low. Is too low. Dalton Schultz's receiving yards, it's got to be higher. I'm going higher, going over for Dalton Schultz on the receiving yards. Man, he looks reliable. He looks like he is still in fantastic football playing form. Sometimes tight ends, when they change teams, they're changing teams because they're beat up and there's not much left in the tank. There's a lot left in Dalton Schultz's tank. He's 2 years removed from an 800-yard receiving season and an 8-touchdown season. And you think about how useful the tight end is to this offense, and Dalton Schultz should be a favored target for C.J. Stroud and should find himself well over this number. And if you can find a touchdown prop, I'd probably take the over on the touchdown prop for Dalton Schultz as well. I love what his opportunity is in this offense. I don't know that he's going to replicate 808, but 650 and 708, something like that from Dalton Schultz, not out of the question. So I would go over on this number. What are you wagering? What are you taking when it comes to these numbers that we've talked about here on the video? Leave a comment down below and let me know. And if I'm way off or I'm nailing it, you let me know in the comment section, and we'll have to revisit this at the end of the year to find out just how much money I lost or how much money I made because I was on the right side of some of these wagers. Appreciate you watching. Again, thumbs up the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Tell somebody about the channel. Send them a link. If they like to gamble, maybe they'll love this video. And, of course, check out Houston Football, www.houfootball.com for all of my writing on the Houston Texans. Thank you for watching. I can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.